Hey everyone, it's Adrian here from Cyber Chameleon. If you're watching this, I'm about to premiere alongside David Lindsay, who co-wrote Travelogue with me. We're about to premiere the book Travelogue. So in this chat, we're going to talk about how we put it together, what Travelogue's about, and some of our favorite stories, I guess, from seeing many
The
Boy George
road.
and... Sorry?
Stories from the road.
Stories from the road, yes, of seeing many Boy George and Culture Club shows over many years.
I'm looking forward to talking about the new book and also answering some of the questions that we got when you put that out there for people to ask questions about the book and the tour in general and things to come. So this is going to be a pretty exciting chat, I think.
What is Travelogue and what's it about?
It started many years ago, actually before I ever even got on the internet. I used to keep track of the tour itineraries that Culture Club and Boy George were doing. And when I was able to, I would include a little set list. And this is more just for my own information. And of course, once I got on the internet, that ballooned into something a lot bigger because I had a lot more access to information and other fans. And I would jot little notes down about something funny that happened at a show and whatnot. And all that was first premiered many years ago as the Chameleon Files. And that was a combination of what we're doing now with Travelogue alongside of a discography. And I kind of retired updating that around 20 years ago, and turned that over to Boy George Fever, who has done a good job of keeping up with most of that. And I thank Jordan for that, his hard work there. But we felt, Adrian and I, that it was time to focus on the tours because there's lots of stories from the road and lots of information to be gleaned about how songs started live and then progressed into the album versions that we all know. And hopefully there's going to be some things included in the book that nobody else knows. I know that some of my stories I've never shared with people. So you'll see little hints of that here and there as you're going through.
I guess when it comes to touring and concerts and things, we may get introduced to George or Culture Club through a song or an album, but it's touring where we get to meet a lot of the other people, that we may have chatted to online, see other
Mhm.
fans, and of course, it's the immediacy of seeing George and Culture Club on stage as well,
Mhm.
which, you know, you can't replicate that by being in your living room and
Right.
watching a show or listening to the album or anything. So actually seeing them in person and seeing them play live in front of you, is something really special.
Nothing's like live. You hear the songs better, you can appreciate the arrangements differently. You can even as you follow them around from year to year, you can see how they change, even little things. Even something as tiny as switching out a guitar player, a session musician or a backing vocalist can change the entire feeling of a song um, from the perspective of fans like us. So
Yeah.
that's the kind of things that I love about going to a show.
With Travelogue, I mean, our aim was to be as, I guess, detailed as possible and as comprehensive as possible
Mhm.
in showcasing or highlighting every Culture Club and Boy George tour since its beginnings in 1981 up until now. We're
Mhm.
still
Mhm.
writing the last chapter as we do this because there's been
And
dates.
another tour was announced.
And another tour was announced. It's like, when do you
Yeah,
stop? When do you stop, this book and say, right, it's coming out now? Because there's always something else. There's always something
maybe
coming up.
maybe we'll do like a little two-page flyer to send out for the last tour.
Well, I mean the last chapter, I mean, I'm still putting the bits and pieces together for that, but the last chapter does, you know, include the dates for the next shows. But
Mhm.
of course,
And
with the
in that last chapter is the Color by Numbers Kissing to Be Clever tour.
I mean, there is a chapter for this year, which hasn't been
Okay.
done yet.
I guess I'm falling behind a little myself.
So Travelogue is 1,000-page, four-book series covering George and Culture Club's touring history from start till now. Throughout each chapter, you'll have things like flyers, ticket stubs, t-shirts, merchandise items, all alongside the dates and set lists and photos from each of the tours. And of the 4 volumes, book 1 is the first one coming out. It covers Culture Club's touring history of the 80s and is 228 pages of colour. So Travelogue is the second book project that David and I have worked on. The first one
Mhm.
that we did was a book called Vanity Case, which came out in 2015 or 16. I think it was 16.
I think so, yes. Yeah.
It's like the years all blur into one at this point. But yeah, we worked on this book, which was really a collection of stories regarding, a whole bunch of Culture Club and George songs. And we set that book out, and I think this is where the sort of seed for this book came from. We set that out like almost like a dream set list, where the first chapter was what we'd see being the first song in this imaginary set list, going right through to what we
The
saw
encore.
as a perfect closer. And it had a combination of Culture Club songs and George solo songs. And we talked about each of these and how they came about and, what were the stories surrounding their releases.
And I think that writing that book together really kind of informed how we work together. I mean, we obviously live on opposite sides of the globe, um, and time zones are even an issue
Yeah.
sometimes.
So for
Uh,
those who don't know, I'm in Melbourne, Australia.
I'm in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah. But
So
yeah, so
he would give me, he's like, oh, give me something to say about Ilador or Funtime. And then I would go into my archives and I'd play the songs and I would interpret the lyrics and write a couple of paragraphs about it and I'd send it back to him. And then he would look it over and he would add and edit and whatever from what I did and come up with the beautiful visuals that is definitely his unsung talent. He makes the most beautiful works, and anyone who's been a fan of Cyber Chameleon for long knows this. And then I would do the same. I would turn it around and I would say, "Hey, why don't you write about this song, Masheri or something?" And he would write what he knew and send it to me, and the reverse would happen. Although he always handled the imagery, I might scan a couple of things for him to use, but all of the beauty you see is his work. And I think with Travelogue, it it wasn't quite as collaborative. I sent him what I was doing from 20 years ago, and then he went away and kind of made it all cohesive and beautiful, and then would send it back to me to edit and to make minor corrections. But I feel like he's doing the heavy lifting this book around.
maybe. I mean, I don't completely agree with that. I mean, yes, I'm doing the sort of layout and the sort of visuals for it to,
Mhm.
I guess, turn it from just text, but one wouldn't exist without the other. Yeah.
This is true, and I'm not trying to downplay my contribution. I want to make sure you're getting the credit you deserve because um, these both of these books, all of these books, once this is done with Travelogue, are they're like a dream for any Culture Club fan, I would hope, to have and to use for reference or remembrance.
Other fan bases seem to have these resources on tap.
Hmm.
Um, when I look at people, who I'm fans of, but not in the same way as Culture Club, when I look at, say, people who are fans of Michael Jackson or Madonna or Kylie
Hmm.
Minogue or, anybody else that I sort of follow, they seem to have a much, dare I say, larger fan base or maybe a different sort of dedication to within that fan base where a lot of these resources are on tap already.
Right.
And so with a book like Vanity Case, when we worked on that together, or even before that, the Cyber Chameleon scrapbook,
Hmm.
and then going into Travelogue, I've kind of looked at each of these projects and go, if I was a fan, where would I be able to find this and what am I
Right.
looking for?
Right.
And, having these books at the end of it or these projects at the end of it, I'm looking at it as a piece of reference material and going, oh, wow, you know, this wasn't there
Hmm.
before and now it is.
Correct. Yeah. I think, and this is not meant to diss any particular type of fan, but I think that a lot of Culture Club fans are so into the image and the gossip, um, that a lot of the things like the music almost come across as secondary. At least the way I look at them, the way they appreciate George and support him and follow him. It's like George, the celebrity, has taken a little bit of importance over George the artist. And I think we need to remind everybody that the artistry, it's kind of like what you just said, it wouldn't exist without the other. We need that artistry to let the celebrity come forth and vice versa.
Absolutely. And I think also when George is interviewed, a lot of the things that, people will ask about would be things like the scene in which he emerged from, like the Blitz scene, the Blitz Club
Mhm.
and all of that. And they'll talk about his influence on fashion and makeup and,
Right.
what he did, I guess, as far as opening people's minds to sexuality and other cultures other than what's in the mainstream. But
Mhm.
very little seems to focus on his artistry as far as a songwriter or a musician or a touring musician. So,
Right.
something like what we're doing with Travelogue kind of fills the gap for that for those who want to know more about that side of things.
And his music supports all of that. I mean, so not to sound corny, but so much of his music deals with or is inspired by other cultures. And uh, I was first introduced to a lot of um, world music and even world religions outside of what I grew up in America knowing through Culture Club and their music first. So I think it's a missed opportunity when he's interviewed and they ask about his you know inspirations or his latest line of fashion or whatever it is, and him not bring up, oh, listen to my song Bow Down Mister, and you'll understand why I wear the tilak or something. I think he could do a better job on stage of that. He gives on a wonderful show. Obviously, I've spent a lot of money going to all of his shows that I have. But if he were to introduce a song like this is, you know, my Hindu upbringing or my Hindu experience or my love of this particular culture or whatever, as he's instead of just saying this is my new song or this was a song released 40 years ago, I think people would understand better why it's important that these songs have lasted so long and why it's important that he's singing them still today.
And with that, I guess also, and why he writes these particular songs or these
Hmm.
particular subjects.
Hmm.
Because I mean, as an audience, we interpret it our own way, but it'd be great to hear some more of the artistic insight
Right,
or the
right.
creative flow for it. Kind of like what we're doing with this.
Hmm.
Rather than just presenting the book, we're telling you a little bit about it.
Right. He did an interview not very long ago, just a couple of months ago, about his some of his videos. I don't know if they're his favorites or if they were picked for him, but telling a little bit about what happened behind the scenes and what the thought process was. Like, why did he come out backwards of the pool and do you really want to hurt me? And things of that nature. And those are the kinds of stories that I would love to hear. I don't care about what brand of makeup he's wearing. I want to know what this is about. Why did he do this? And how is this influencing what he's doing now? So I think that as you see more and more of his stage performances and hear him comment here and there, you can start to piece together a lot of these stories into a fuller picture. And that's what I hope Travelogue will help people do is kind of see, okay, he's traveled these parts of the world, and then the next year he released a song that has a Burundi beat, or you know what I mean? Like the Spanish guitars in a lot of the late Jesus Loves You stuff was after he came back from a South American tour. And it's like, did he pick that up from there, or what was the influence? How did that come? So that's an interesting thing on a timeline to kind of piece together as well. So I just discovered another new use for our book.
The world according to George and his songs.
Exactly.
No, no, that's probably not the next book. Travelogue is a four-book series, as we've mentioned, and book one is coming out this week on December 10. Book one covers Culture Club's touring history from 1981 to 1986. So it kind of covers when they became a huge global band from from when they first started out to when they were filling arenas at the height of their 80s success. Book two comes out on December 17 or thereabouts, and that covers the years of 1987 to 2007, which covers a lot of George's solo career from the 80s and the 90s, when Culture Club reunited in the late 90s, and then explores, I guess, some of George's projects post that reunion when he was the twin, and also a few solo gigs in there. And also as a tiny little chapter where people will go, but why is this in there when it's not related to George? The ill-fated 2006 reunion of Culture Club, which didn't feature George or Roy Hay.
Culture Club Reborn.
They were reborn and
Yeah,
they fizzled out really quickly.
it
But
did.
we'll
It
go,
did. I think that speaks for itself as to how most fans feel about that era. But we're going for completeness here. We're not trying to push anything under a rug or pretend like something didn't happen.
it seems to be a subject where even the band don't talk about it other than when George jokes, and they tried to replace me.
I think just the bottom line of that is they asked, George said no, so they went ahead without him, and it didn't work. End of, right?
Yeah, that's
That's a
pretty
very
much it.
simple way.
Book three comes out just before Christmas on December 24, and it covers the years 2008 to 2017, which sees George doing a few solo things, re-emerging as more of a solo artist rather than a lot of DJing, which was what he was doing. And, in that book, it has the This Is What I Do era, which sort of really brought him back to touring on a wider scale, which then leads into Culture Club reuniting for an album called Tribes, which didn't get released, but then touring that extensively around North America, Australia, and then the rest of the world in 2016 and 17. And book four comes out just before the end of this year. We're not going to make you wait till next year. Also, because I don't want to work on this for the third year running. um, but book four covers 2018 with the Life World Tour and everything from there up until present day. So when you have all four books in front of you, you will have more than 1,000 pages with many, many, many photos. And somebody asked, are there going to be pictures in there? With 1,000 pages, there are a lot of pictures. There are so
I
many
would say
pictures.
it's more pictures than text,
Yeah,
I would think.
it's very visual. It's very colorful.
Mhm.
We want you at the end of this to feel like you were almost there at any particular time.
Right. It's immersive.
Yeah.
It's immersive.
So with each chapter, I went into a deep dive. I pulled out my scrapbooks, memorabilia, tour books. I would go on Google searches. I'd look at things like Setlist FM. I would look at concert archives. I would find as much as I possibly could for each chapter, you know, text wise, as far as getting as many facts as possible, going into like all the pictures and things to get things as visual as possible. So, what you're going to see with each chapter is as much as I could possibly put into each tour, if that makes sense.
Mhm. And
And
go ahead. Sorry.
and then I would find, um, oh, I'm missing something. Like I don't have enough pictures for this era, or I don't have anything for this, or I don't know what this show was about. And then that's when I would ask David, hey, can you fill in the gaps on this? And he'd be
So
doing kind of the same.
yeah, I went through and I actually got organized. I think I've always been kind of a neat freak when it comes to my record collection. The rest of my house is a shambles, but I can put my finger on anything in my collection in less than 5 minutes. But I got through the stuff that I didn't have organized, like a lot of clippings and ticket stubs and old cassettes. And I would, play those and kind of remind myself, it's like, why is this show important? Or, what happened here that I've got a little star on the cover to make sure I don't lose it or whatnot. And that kind of led me into, creating all these little scrapbooks that I have. And so, and it kind of informed what we did with this. We wanted every page or every chapter to be like a scrapbook that you can go through. So you've got lots of pictures like these. This is my very first Culture Club show ever, 1985 at the Pacific Amphitheater in Los Angeles. And then these are a bunch of tickets, some are photographs, and some of these I took that night, and some of them are ones that I found online and either downloaded or purchased. I know I bought a big lot of these on eBay once with a second copy of that ticket. It's very shocking to me that it was the same show that I was at. I don't know how well these are showing up. There's a lot of glare on them or
Yeah, no,
anything, but
no, that's good.
okay. So, and that's that, just remembering that first show, um, sparked a lot of interest in this project, a lot of new interest in this project to make it as complete and beautiful as we can. So, anything that I had like that from any of the shows that I've been to was instantly scanned and shipped off to Adrian to be included in the book. And I think from what I've seen and what we've completed, I think he used quite a few of mine, but we also sent the message out to all of you and send in your memories and photos and pictures of merchandise and all that. And we have a beautiful collection, I think, a beautiful archive in this book. It's a lot more comprehensive than it could have been by any one of us alone. So thank you, everybody who helped us make this what it is.
Absolutely. This book wouldn't have ended up being what it was if it wasn't for your contributions, however great or small you may have considered it to be. I
Mhm.
mean, everything's kind of gone in there.
I
And
think Adrian's a lot like me in the sense that we see something we've never seen before, and that's the most exciting thing of the day. It's like we have to include this, don't we? We can't let that go. I've never seen that before. And there was a lot of those moments when we were getting things that we didn't even know existed in
well,
terms of photographs and memorabilia and such.
yeah, one that stands out for me as you were saying that was, okay, I really want to research Culture Club's early days, as in their sort of
Hmm.
first tour dates, their first performances before they made it big with Do You Really Want to Hurt Me? And then everybody knew about them.
Right.
And yeah, that was sort of one of the first things I was researching or working on for this book, because believe it or not, these chapters were not done chronologically. I didn't go, right, now I'm going to do 1984. I won't
Right.
I won't give it away and say which one was the first chapter and which one was the last. Of course, the most recent thing is the last, but other than that, you know, the chapters that I'm finishing and putting the final touches on now aren't necessarily the last one. But so going back to the original, to the first chapter for the book, I was
Hmm.
like, oh, how good would it be if I could find some more early material? And I happened to, and this is in the book, happened to stumble across a picture of the first show that Culture Club did at Crocs in 1981 on a Facebook group. Someone
Hmm.
had posted, "Oh, I've got this flyer." And like, wow.
Right.
That was one of those light bulb moments where I felt I'm on the right track with this book.
Hmm.
Mind you, it was almost 2 years ago and I'm not quite done yet, but it's like
It's a
that
long
was
track.
it's been a long track.
Yes.
I did not expect this book or these series of books. It was only going to be one book. I did not expect this book to be as big or as detailed or as immersive and intensive as it's ended up being, from my point of view, as working on it, to
Hmm.
what you as an audience are going to see with this.
There was a moment like that for me too, oddly enough, from the exact same chapter, when you found flyers using the name Can't Wait Club. I
Yeah,
don't think I'd heard that name before, but I thought it was just something they toyed with and got rid of. I
that
didn't
was
know that they actually performed one under that name.
that was a one-off show where they billed it as that. I mean, I think at that point they were still Culture Club because it wasn't the first show they did.
No, you're right. It was, but it makes me wonder, were they still trying to settle on the name Culture Club, or is there something, was someone not happy with that name and they wanted to keep trying things to see what stuck? Because they didn't have a record deal at that point, so it could have very easily have shifted names. And it makes me wonder if there's other things like that out there. Did they ever perform under some of their other names?
Well,
But I hope not, because I want to be done with this.
it was like also with chapter one, going back to that, where a very early title for Culture Club as a band was In Praise of Lemmings.
Hmm.
And someone had randomly posted on X that there was a poster of what was Kirk Brandon's band at the time, Theatre of Hate, was it?
Fear of
No.
Death.
So there was a poster there with In Praise of the Lemmings as a support act to Kirk's performance that night. So
Hmm.
it's like they did actually perform. Well, George actually performed as In Praise of Lemmings out there. And that's something I didn't know anything about.
Right.
I just thought it was a name they toyed with and never used and never did anything with.
Hmm.
So,
So I don't know how many more uh, of the unknown things like that are going to be in the book for a lot of fans, but hopefully there's other incidences like that where people can, oh wow, this is exciting to me. This is brand new news. It's not just a trip down memory lane. Um,
yeah, I mean, I hope there'll be lots of discoveries like that for the casual fan who may not have been around in the 80s to
mhm.
have taken in some of the early stuff, or likewise, going through any particular era. With me, I mean, you've mentioned your first show. My first time seeing George live was DJing because
Mhm.
I was too young when Culture Club came out in the 80s. And in the 90s, George did his first DJ tour of Australia in 1995. And that's where I got to meet him. I took mum along with me as a 17-year-old because I wasn't 18 yet or anything, and it was an 18 plus club. And, got to see him DJ, got to meet him where he signed a lot of my records and all of that sort of stuff. But I hadn't seen George live as far as performing live, as in musically,
Mhm.
um, in a concert setting until Culture Club reunited and came out in the year 2000. So,
Wow.
I have my tour book from then.
Mhm.
And I was lucky enough to win a competition with the local newspaper here in Melbourne, called the Herald Sun, where I got to meet them backstage. So one of my favorite, items from, I guess, my collection is when I first met all of them. And if you can see that, that's
Mhm.
signed by George and Mikey on that double spread, and John on that side. And you'll kind of see if you look closely that there's like a signature under John's signature. He tried to sign it once and the book gave way, so then he just signed on top of it, which makes for a messy signature but a nice story. And I don't know where's Roy's. Roy's is hiding in there on the thing where I've got a very interesting version of spelling for my name, but you know what? I've met him a couple of times after that, and he signed it properly, so that's fine. But
Maybe that
yeah,
E
so
at the end
that's
was supposed to be a heart.
yeah. We'll just say it was great. um, and so yeah, so that was the first time I've seen Culture Club live. Unfortunately, George hasn't toured solo in Australia since 1989, so I'm yet to see a George solo concert.
Mhm.
Oddly enough, the last two or three times where George was scheduled to tour for different festivals, one was Fantabulosa, the next one was the Timeless Music Festival, which was going to come at the beginning of this year, and both got cancelled. And yeah, so I haven't made it I haven't made it to a George solo show. I almost went to the big one, which was at Vegas in
Mhm.
2024,
Right.
but
You
I was a
decided to
day.
do the London shows instead.
Yeah, I was a day away. I was going with my friend Nat. I was a day away from going to Vegas, and then they announced this. It was like,
Mhm.
do I go to Vegas for one show, or do I go to London, which I've never been to, and do a series of shows?
Mhm.
That one out.
I, I wish I could have gone to those London shows. So we're envious of each other, but we're also living through each other vicariously. So that's good.
Absolutely.
I do
So,
have my second time seeing George perform live. I want to put this quick story out there
mm,
because this is not in the book. And this is one of those stories that people I tell and I can tell that they don't believe it. And I swear this is 100% true. Um, he had been banned from performing in the United States for many years after his initial problem in '86. And he got booked on his first live performance, or any performance actually, in Los Angeles on the Arsenio Hall show, which is a chat show that was very popular in the late '80s and early '90s, and geared towards more of a rap, hip hop, urban market. But George was on those charts with "Don't Take My Mind on a Trip," and so they booked him, and he was going to perform "Whisper." And my friend and I stayed up all night long outside of the recording studio to get tickets to be in that show. And we were like third and fourth person in line, but our tickets were in the very back row. And we were so disappointed. But while we were standing there, once they opened up the line to let people into the audience, I was standing there and I had to go to the bathroom so badly. And I asked a studio person, it's like, is there a toilet that I could go to? And they said, yes, go in here, go down the hall on the left. So I did exactly what she said, and I opened up the door, and it was to the stage, and George was rehearsing Whisper right then and there. And I stood there, like doing a little dance, not because of the music, and listened to him perform the whole song. And I wish I would have been brave enough to stay, and I probably would have if I didn't have that personal emergency happening. Um, so that was my second time. So officially my third time was a few hours later when he actually performed it for television. But that song, that album, that moment will always hold a very special place in my heart because of that, like a little tiny moment of a private concert just for me and the studio executives and everyone, getting the lighting right for the stage and all that. But
Wow,
that's my second
to have been there for that. Wow.
But yeah.
So we have a series of questions that have been submitted to us from various social media and emails and
Mhm.
all related to Travelogue and I guess our experiences with tours. So
Right. And I have
uh,
mine in my hat from
uh,
last year's tour.
again, this is you being more organized than me. I've just got the
Oh,
printout in front of me.
well, you can pretend it's in a hat.
My first selection from the questions is if you could go back in time and choose to buy a ticket right now, pick one date and place from the book and justify.
Guiltily, I want to say my first show again so I can experience that again. But since I've done that already, it would be a waste of a time travel. I would much rather go back even further and see like the show at Crocs or any of those very, very early shows before they were signed to Virgin because they're not well documented. And we have some rough ideas of the set list. And I know there's been an audio recording floating around for years that has got different dates attached to it.
The
Um,
Regency Suite one, yeah.
exactly. That's the one I'm talking about. And I would like to go to one of those just to see and experience what it was like when nobody knew who George was and nobody knew what to expect from a Culture Club show. Um, I know that they were big at the Hacienda, and there's a compilation album that came out a couple years ago that talks about how popular they were. And they were actually the first band invited to play live at that venue. It was a disco before that. And I'm Afraid of Me, it didn't do very well in the charts, but the majority of the copies sold were sold in and around this club because the DJ loved that song, played it every night, sometimes two or three times, and was really responsible for getting Culture Club to play there live. And I think that might have been their second or third show at that venue. Um, so I probably want to go to something like this, where there would be like a buzz of popularity, but not complete apathy from people who have no idea what they're seeing. So that's my answer.
Um, Mine was going to also be the first show. I would have
Okay,
loved
good.
um, to go back to see Culture Club at their beginnings without any sort of influence from a record company, without media, without, I guess, an audience which may have spurred them on to write differently or, influence their style again. To see what they were like, raw and, I guess, unfiltered,
Hmm.
with just their own ideas coming out into a live performance. Yes, it would have been raw. It would have been very rough. It would have been short because they didn't have an album's worth of material at that point. but just to see them at the first show or one of the first shows would have been amazing.
Mhm.
And of course, there'd be a lot of songs there that didn't make the album and stuff. We'd be like, oh, more of that early sound, which,
Right.
introduced them to us or us to
Mhm.
them, whichever way you want to look at that.
I,
So,
I I was going to say, since we picked the same, I'm going to throw out an alternate.
mhm.
I would either go further back to see a Bow Wow Wow show with George, or I would go just a few months back to one of the Color by Numbers and Kissing Be Clever shows because I missed them. I don't think they're going to play that again. I don't think they'll do another show devoted to an entire album or two like that because I don't think it went the way George hoped it would, which is unfortunate. But those would be you. You can go to the old ones, and I'll go to those, and then we can live vicariously through each other even more.
Absolutely. I mean, other ones that come to mind for me would be, I guess, any of George's solo tours, because I haven't
Mhm.
seen any of them. So I would have loved to have seen one from the This Is What I Do tour. And
Mhm.
it doesn't matter which date because they all sounded and looked amazing.
Yeah, they
There
were
was
all
just
different though. So,
I
and,
mean,
and
there was, from what I could see of those dates, they were very intimate's probably the best word, but very sort of inviting to an audience to be in, like immersive. It'd
mhm.
be, you were part of the show by being in there.
That tour might be the closest we could ever come to those early Culture Club days because here he was reintroducing himself to his audience and playing mostly unfamiliar songs and playing in smaller venues. So that probably had a very good feel like the first Culture Club shows.
And I guess similarly, because as you say that, this is probably where my next choice would come in, would be the 2014 gig that Culture Club did at Heaven,
Yeah.
where I would have loved to have been there to hear all the songs that were going to be on
Mhm.
Tribes perform live for the first time. It's the only time Oil and Water has been performed, and that's one of my absolute favorites.
Mhm.
Of course, I've already mentioned it earlier, the solo show that George did in Vegas in
Right.
24. That I
Mhm.
would have loved to have been at that because I think that was probably, of recent times, the ultimate George solo show.
I would agree. I was lucky enough to be at that show, and one of the best moments of that show was just seeing the sea of familiar faces. There's so many fans from around the world made it to that show because even though it wasn't advertised as anything special, um, not blatantly so, uh, George kind of let it slip that he was going to be um, doing it alone. There was no opening act or anything like that, so it was going to be a little bit longer. And although he called it an intimate venue, maybe compared to some of the other places he played on that tour, it was, but it was a full-sized Vegas venue, which is um, not intimate at all. But it was a wonderful time to meet up with people. I met people that I'd only known online. I met people that I never knew at all. It was a really, really good vibe in that show. The last half hour was he basically performed every song that they had rehearsed as a band for that tour. So, and then the regular shows, he would just do a regular like 90-minute set, picking and choosing from that extended set list. And at the Vegas show, he did every song that they had rehearsed. And the last 30 minutes was all the little bonus songs that he would throw in every once in a while along the way. Um, and I would say that as exciting as that was as a fan, I think the casual people in the audience and the Vegas tourists that said, "Oh, let's get a ticket to Boy George," didn't understand what was happening because the last half hour of the show was really a lot of unfamiliar songs or slow songs. I mean, he closed the show with Mistake Number Three, which the fans were dying to hear and loved, but that's not a concert closer.
David, would you like to pick a question
I will.
from the
Let's
hat?
see. Just to be fair, I won't even look. All right, which one do I have? Which would be a great opening act, a shared bill for a future tour? From the past one, which was your favorite?
I guess with the tours that have come to Australia, they've had quite a lot of support acts. We've had ones, like, say, when I first saw them in 2000, it was with the Village People as the main
Mhm.
support act. And then to have a local contingent, they had Pseudo Echo, who were big in the 80s as well. Um, But like, say for the 2016 shows, we had pretty much every single, or what felt like every single 80s act who had reunited and was doing the touring scene as their support act at different points.
Hmm.
Of the ones that have made it to Australia that I really liked it when we had Tom Bailey from the Thompson Twins as a support
Hmm.
act. I thought that complemented Culture Club's sound really well as far as an overnight feel. I mean, over the nights feel for the two shows. I would love to see, I guess, someone like Cyndi Lauper open for Culture Club or be sort of like a dual bill. I mean, I
Hmm.
know they've talked about it since the 80s, but if Duran Duran was ever doing a double bill and they wanted someone of their peer or their contemporary from the 80s, Culture Club would be perfect for that. I don't really know if there's anybody else, like, say, a current act who I'd like to see alongside George
Hmm.
touring. You know, maybe people George have has worked with. Like, say, if Vangelis did a opening set and then it weaved into the main show, or you know, Warwicker, for example, you know, with Mesmerized being a recent single with George, you know, it'd be great if we could see some of the people, or We Are Brando, for example, you know,
Hmm.
seeing some of the people that George works with, on, you know, live on stage as well, and not just being the odd sort of studio project that we see a single come out from.
You touched on some of the ones that I was already thinking about, like Thompson Twins and Duran Duran. They announced the Super Concert in 1985, and I watched that live on Good Morning America. My 15-year-old self in my pajamas, not wanting to go to school until I got to see this announcement, and then it never happened. It was going to be a satellited around the world live concert with Duran Duran and Culture Club, and then Duran Duran backed out first, and Culture Club couldn't get anybody else to sign on with them as it reads in the magazine. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what the official story is. And I would have I've been waiting, 40 years for that show. But I do like the idea of him working with people that he's working with. I think he did a little bit of that back in the early 90s where he would do the More Protein reviews and he would have MC Kinky do 3 or 4 songs, and then Eve Gallagher do 3 or 4 songs, and then two of them would join him on stage as Jesus Loves You with the rest of his band. And something like that has always appealed to me because, I mean, as a fan of George's, I don't necessarily want to go to a show and watch someone I have no idea who they are and have no connection to him. Um, but if it can be someone like that he's worked with, or someone that is of his same era, those are the best for me. Um, but I'd also like to see him, kind of push people onto us. He's turned me on to lots of different styles of music and lots of musicians throughout his career by saying, "Oh, like We Are Brando." I don't know that I would have ever given them. I don't even know if I would have the opportunity to hear them in America without George's influence. So that's kind of a side benefit to how George puts his shows together is that he tends to have the last say on who his opening act is. So he doesn't always get it right, but for him it is, and that's good. Uh, what I would something I often thought about years and years ago was when Jesus Loves You was a thing, and then there was the Culture Club reunion around in '89 where they were talking about that. It's like, well, here's a perfect opportunity. He can open for himself. He can do the opening act as Jesus Loves You, do 5 or 6 songs, and then Culture Club come out and do their show. And something like that would have just been amazing. But I doubt the rest of Culture Club would have approved of him getting twice the stage time. um, but I've always liked the idea of when Culture Club will incorporate something into their set that's traditionally known as a George song. It doesn't happen very often outside of Crying Game and Everything I Own, which are covers. But every once in a while they'll slip up and they'll do um, uh, Eyeliner Voodoo, and they even did Bow Down Mister at the 20th anniversary show, reluctantly and unrehearsed, but it still sounds good.
For Culture Club or solo with absolutely no hits and singles, which songs would be included?
Well, that's an interesting question because a lot of the songs I want to hear live were never hits or singles anyway. But my first thing would go after some of the non-hit singles that I would love to hear live, especially from the late 80s, like Don't Take My Mind on a Trip or Live My Life. Those were minor hits in America. I mean, they opened doors in the urban community for Virgin to market him differently, but they were never really hits. I think Don't Take My Mind on a Trip was a dance hit, a 12-inch single sales hit, but nobody remembers that song when they think about Boy George. So songs like that would be nice. And then other things like, B-sides or things that he's never done before, like Mystery Boy. Um, he's already kind of checked off a lot of my favorites in recent years, like Love Is Love and Mistake Number Three. But none of those were huge hits. Love Is Love was big outside of the English speaking world, but that's it. I mean, you go into Asia and it was a massive hit, and you play it on American radio and people don't even recognize it as Culture Club. So, I guess that could count as a non-hit. I'd like to hear him do maybe some covers more of his contemporaries rather than his favorite artists. So, step into the 80s. He did a couple of 80s covers like Sweet Dreams and Tainted Love. And those were, I think he did them well and they went over well. I'd love to hear him do more. In Purple Rain, that's almost a standard in his set nowadays. So I'd like to see him reach out. Yeah, I actually had a chance to ask him once about Dead or Alive's You Spin Me Round, especially after Pete had died. And he said, we rehearsed it a couple of times, but nobody can sing that song except Pete. And it's like, that's not the only song he had. The song Into Deep always sounded like it should have been a Culture Club song in the first place.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
So, things like that. But, I'll never have the opportunity to influence a set list. So, we all have wishes and fantasies, and those are mine.
My answer to that would be very similar to yours as far as the B-sides. I was
Mhm.
thinking, you know, we got, I guess, a hint of that with the Zero Arguments tour, where we got the Color by Numbers and Kissing to Be Clever title tracks. But I would love to hear things like Don't Go Down That Street or
Mhm.
Love is Cold or Mystery Boy or Man Shake live. You know,
Yeah.
because some of those, particularly like, say, Mystery Boy or Man Shake, they have such energy to those songs. It'll be like,
Mhm.
what would that have looked like live or what would that sound like live?
I'm not sure he could sing Mystery Boy anymore. That was at the top of his register then. So trying to get that out now, it would have to be rekeyed very, very low. But even so, Vangelis can hit those notes. Let him sing the lead. Let George take Helen's parts. That would
It's
be fun.
I mean, it'd still be very interesting to see how that would be interpreted now. George's sound is very different to overall Culture Club sound, and George's sound is very different to what they did in the beginning.
Mhm.
So, that's one of the things I found interesting about the Zero Arguments tour was hearing the
Right.
album tracks from from those two albums being played live because, like, okay, I'm used to hearing them a particular way, whether that was on the original albums or, from live bootlegs or videos or DVDs from those
From the era.
eras
Yeah.
and how they performed them live then. But hearing how they perform them live now, it was completely different.
Mhm.
It was like putting a new coat of paint on you know, on an old
Mhm.
wall and going, oh, is this what it could sound like or look like?
Right.
So,
I do want to point out, though, getting a little bit on the technical era or the technical side of things, is they did rekey some of the songs down to suit his voice better on that tour, but they didn't on all of them. He can still sing those high notes, and he still has a command of his voice. He's commanding a different voice, but he isn't worse. He is he's obviously had a lot more vocal training, and he's not damaging his vocal cords the way he would have if he continued to sing the way he was in 2000 even. Um, so I do want to point that out, that yes, he does sound different now, but anybody who understands um, like the physical uh, aspect required to sing these songs and hit these notes will understand why he's doing what he's doing and how it's actually better, because he's tending to his voice. He's preserving it, which means it's going to last a lot longer. And he's able to hold a note for so much longer. He would used to, sing a note and pull the microphone away to fade it out because it would start to crackle or go flat or go sharp. And now he's confidently holding that microphone and holding it for 30 seconds, which is not a good, easy thing to do. and shows how strong his voice actually is. So this is his change. It's not a sign of weakness, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's a wonderful thing for us to embrace. Well, here's the next one, and this is a good one for you because it's addressed to you.
Addressed to me.
So
Okay.
yes. Once Adrian released a compilation of his Australian concert recordings from one of the two tours in his country in 2016. Would you consider working on a music video montage with video footage representing each tour? It would be challenging for the earlier ones, but photos could be used as well. A long one too.
It's a long question. It's a detailed question. Ones for each tour. I guess somewhere along the way we could do something where I don't know, we've got like say a live bootleg recording and we then sort of marry photos or things to that.
Hmm.
For the earlier dates it might be difficult because there just may not be enough footage or photos to cover, you know, a 10-song
The whole,
gig, for example.
kind of what I'm thinking about when I read that, because I know exactly what you just said, the limitations of what's available. But we could edit together, like we'll take "Do You Really Want to Hurt Me" from this show, and then do "War Song" from this one, and "Time" from that one, and kind of do one video that represents the entire career with a song or two from each show. Because you could probably find, even if it's not video footage of the same song, you might be able to find video from a
That
different part
era.
of a different show and make it more mixed up or I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but in the same, because I know exactly the video he's talking about from 2016 where you did lots of heavy edits from
Yeah.
and it kind of gave everyone the experience of every outfit he wore
It
and married
was
it to one song. So
it
it
was
could be
kind of
done.
like one extended concert from all the concerts I
Right,
went to
right.
and also what I could grab from YouTube. But most of that was my recordings from the 3 or 4 shows I went to, and
Mhm.
then sort of spliced it all together. I mean, I'd still love to do that for the 2024 Zero Arguments tour.
Right.
I
There's
guess
so little footage of that, though. I'm surprised in this age of everyone putting their phone up for the whole show that there's only like one complete show and two or three other uploaders who shared.
I I recorded like not everything, but I recorded quite a bit from the
Hmm.
3 shows that I went to. So there is something I could edit together from what I took, what other people have put up on YouTube and make one sort of multi-edit long show.
Hmm. You could
Um,
also take, since it's so many of the old songs, and there are lots of concerts, like from France and Denmark and Japan and whatnot, you could even pull from that and have, the audio from 2024 and then like fade into a 1980s uh,
performance
part.
and
Yeah, and then kind of fade back out and um, do something along those lines too to kind of really get the essence of what this song used to be and what it is today. Not the audio, that would never work. But
I'm not sure what I would, I guess over the years I've had ideas for different video projects or
Mhm.
different audio projects that I could sort of present on YouTube that I just haven't done because of time and all of that sort of thing. And video editing takes up a lot of time, a lot of computer grunt, all of that sort of stuff. And I
Right.
always tend to, whenever I get into one of these ideas, it always tends to be when my computer's on its way out. And, this time about 10 or 11 years ago, I thought, okay, I'm going to do this huge DVD project, which you saw a little bit of,
Right.
where
Yeah.
I was going to do all of George's solo videos as a DVD compilation to sit alongside the Culture Club Greatest Hits DVD,
Hmm.
where each of the videos were polished up from the original VHSs, synced up to the actual audio, so it was going to be a clear, cohesive
Hmm.
sound throughout. And then my hard drive crashed. No, my computer crashed. It completely died. Um, about 2 DVDs into it, and like I can't, and I didn't have a backup of all the
Right.
files, and I'm like, I can't spend another, 6 months or a year going back and doing that again. So,
If there's a way to polish that story with a happy ending, I
mm,
believe that was when I learned the edit to whisper on the video, that old song again, is not the same as the single edit that was released in America. It's unique. It's not the album version. It's not the 7-inch version. There's like an extra chorus thrown in, but before the middle eight or something, if I remember right. But it is a good 30 seconds longer than the 7-inch version.
I mean, I've got so many ideas. It's just a matter of committing to them. And the only reason why I haven't done, like, say, a compilation video for the Zero Arguments tour was that, well, one, I was working on Travelogue,
Mhm.
and two, I really thought and I hoped, because of the amount of effort put into that production as a tour, that it was going to
Right.
come out officially.
Right. And it was filmed
Yeah.
professionally. So
So,
that hope might still be there. I don't know.
so
Maybe for
yeah,
the
with the
50th
with the
anniversary.
anticipation or expectation that that was coming out officially, I was like, well, I don't want to do my edit of it. So yeah, so to go back to the question, would I consider doing a music video with footage representing each tour? There'd be some tours where possibly I wouldn't have enough to do it justice. So there might be moments, or like shorts or reels or something, that we
Mhm.
could do, like, for each tour or something, but I don't think full length ones. I mean, something else I've always wanted to do is remix an entire album and then do like a video album to it.
Our life is too short to have these many good ideas.
There's just not enough time to execute them. Which tour was the most difficult to gather information about?
That's a good question, and it's hard to answer because I think everyone presented its own challenges in different ways. A lot of the early stuff we keep going back to is hard just because it wasn't kept. The fans didn't have scrapbooks at home before anyone knew who Culture Club was, so that stuff just wasn't kept, so it was harder to find. But personally, I think it's hard to find material from the 87 Sold tour because there was only one or two dates in England. Everything else was in Europe. Nothing in Japan or America or Australia for that tour. And there was the only professional recordings that I know of are incomplete. There was the show in Florence that was broadcast on TV, just the first 30 minutes, and they cut it off. I don't know if it was planned to be that short or, contracted to be that short, or if they just cut it off because it wasn't a super great performance. And then there's an audio recording in France that was broadcast on the radio, which is also incomplete. They actually mixed in a couple of Culture Club recordings to beef it up some to get, I think the total broadcast was 8 songs live, but 4 of those came from A Kiss Across the Ocean. Um, so that was a difficult tour for me to find stuff out about because it just was not documented the way the other ones were. And I relied a lot on Take It Like a Man for that. That's about the only place I could find information on that tour.
I found that with the Culture Club tours of the 80s, that was fairly easy to get stuff on,
Mhm.
especially the ones that where they toured, like, say, the US or Australia. So, like, things like the When Cameras Go Crazy or the A Kiss Across the Ocean chapters, they're very complete as far as information and the pictures and the visuals and everything that go with it. Um, Likewise, anything from sort of the last 15 years as what has been well documented in social media and everything like that. So those are very easy to find without having to dive too deep. I found the 90s chapters, and I hope they don't end up looking too thin as a result compared to the rest of the books or the
Mhm.
chapters in the books. I found the 90s chapters really hard to find things from my point of view as a fan and a collector. George didn't tour Australia with any of his solo things
Mhm.
from 89 onwards. Even then, in 89, that tour was more a series of dates and clubs rather than concert
Right.
venues. So they weren't necessarily well publicized either. So it's not
How
like my
many
script.
dates did he do on that tour?
I believe it was just Melbourne, Brisbane, and Sydney, and one day
Okay.
each.
Hmm.
There was one for Adelaide, which I've mentioned it in the book, but there was something along the lines of an airstrike or some sort of strike or something which prevented him getting to Adelaide and getting out of Adelaide in time for the next show. So
Hmm.
he just went to, I think it was Melbourne for the next show. Um, So that was only 3 dates, club dates
Mhm.
again, and it was promoting a perfume line. So most media didn't really touch it other than interviewing him to say, "Oh, look, I'm coming." But
Mhm.
I mean, what I was looking for Travelogue wasn't him doing, I guess, appearances on talk shows talking about the tour. It was more information about the tour itself, about the shows
Mhm.
itself, and those weren't well covered.
Right. I mean,
So
from that tour, he did a MTV did broadcast two songs
yeah,
from I think it was the Sydney
yeah,
show.
Sydney.
And that's all I know of it. There's a bootleg cassette out there that's almost unlistenable. It's so poorly recorded. But it's enough so I knew what the set was. But even it's incomplete. It cuts off on time, and from what I understand, that was not the last song. Um, but yeah, I agree. That's a very tough one to get any information on.
Yeah, so likewise, anything from sort of I found the late 80s to probably the early 2000s the hardest to
Mhm.
get a lot of information from. We had all the text from, your initial puttings together of tours and set lists and stuff, but there
Mhm.
weren't a lot of photos out there.
Right. I think
Even
that era before cell phones became omnipresent and after the media was really concerned about his career,
yeah.
that's like a little dark area to try and get information
Mm.
from. I know the US tour, the only place I could find any tour dates was on the back of a t-shirt. I don't even know if every one of in fact I know not every one of those shows were played, but that's the only information I could get for the 91 tour, which was also a series of club dates like you had.
Yeah.
Um, Going back to an earlier question about time machines, I would like to go back to maybe one of those shows and get all the information I possibly can.
Go grab one of each t-shirt from the merchandise stand and all that
Right.
sort of stuff.
And they
um,
were so cheap then.
yeah, so the 90s was the hardest chapters to fill out. Taking cameras into gigs, like now we have phones and phones document everything, but
Mhm.
taking cameras into gigs wasn't a thing, so they weren't well documented. Media wasn't really reporting on George's dates, and a lot of the, like, say, early Jesus Loves You stuff, they were in clubs. So, mainstream media wasn't going to go to a club to see George perform at 1 a.m.
Right.
and report about it the next day with photos and the rest. So, yeah, the 90s was the hardest, and probably that sort of gap in the 2000s from, like, say, 2002 after the Culture Club reunion to 2008 or 9. I find that chapter's probably a little on the light side in the book, but not
I'm
so
not
much
sure
that
he
you
was
don't get an idea of, but there just wasn't
right.
enough out there.
And he was that was kind of a slow period for him artistically in general. He wasn't releasing a lot of records. He didn't have a label. So it makes sense that that would be difficult to get information on because he wasn't doing much, and what he was doing just didn't seem to matter to the media.
And there was stuff like The Twin, which was deliberately not mainstream.
This is a good one. I've been asked this by a few people, and I know you have. Why is Travelogue free? You've both put a lot of work into this. Thank you. And it's a huge project. Shouldn't you be charging for this? Um, well, I know legally what the answer is, but do you want to answer that?
Let's do the happy version first. Because
Okay,
we want, okay, the first thing is we want you to have this book.
absolutely.
You know, we're fans. Me being at the helm of Cyber Chameleon for 25 years, and before that, lyrically speaking, it's all about sharing information. It's sharing our collective thoughts, our collections, our memorabilias, our pictures, you know, everything. It's about sharing it with other people who would appreciate it.
Mhm.
You know, I might tell my family and friends about this book and they'll just go, oh, yeah. And, when showing one of my friends, like, say, the draft of book one,
Mhm.
because, it's like, oh, I finished the first book, you have to see it. He just looked at it and said, oh, there's a lot of pictures, aren't there? I'm like, yeah, that's the point. And he was like, but there's too many pictures. I'm like, no, that's the point. You're meant to get a whole encapsulated idea of what this tour was and what it looked like. And it's supposed to give you enough that you're almost in it.
Mhm.
Um, Look, when the sort of subject of money comes up, there'll be people that will say, yes, I want to buy it.
Mhm.
And, but the majority of people, if you're offering something for free, they'll just be happily taking it for free. So, there's that. But there's also people that'll be like, but you've done so many things for free before. Why would you charge for this?
Exactly.
So, so there's that side of the argument where it would take a lot of money and resources from that side of things to establish, like, say, if I was to print 100 copies of the book, we're talking 1,000 pages, 100 copies, you know, that could be like, say, $50 a book. You times that by, 4 volumes, it's $200 a set. By the time you put up some markup, because there's going to be things like postage and stuff and all that sort of
Mhm.
stuff, are people really going to want to spend $300 on a set of 4 books of about Culture Club and George's touring history?
Right.
There aren't too many people that are going to say willingly yes. So
Mhm.
then there's the logistics of, well, do you cut that down? Do you cut that down to one book that's 100 pages and it's mostly text? Do you, you know, do you chop it down or condense it to a point where it becomes more economical to produce a physical copy? Then
Mhm.
it's like, but then you're taking away the essence of what this book is about. So
Right.
there's all of that. And then you go into the sort of legal things. I've gone through my collection of things, to put photos and flyers and all of that sort of stuff. I've, I've bought pictures from photo agencies and subscriptions that I've had and websites that I've been to where people have submitted things. And, a lot of these pictures come from websites that don't exist anymore, like 100% Boy or Devil in Sister George or any of the amazing fan sites from the early 2000s
Mhm.
where people submitted their own photos to those sites. They're all the things that I've included in this. So then it'd be a thing of, if I'm going to put it out for something that's going to gain money, all the people that have contributed inadvertently, whether it's a photographer from an agency, whether it's someone who's sent photos to a magazine back in 1980, whatever,
Mhm.
the logistics of trying to find who it is to credit it, to give them a percentage or a licensing fee or something, all of that makes it impossible to put out a book like this.
And if we were to limit it to just our own photos, it would be a very, very small book, a very boring book.
I mean, I've only gone to about, and I say only like it's only a couple, but I've only probably gone to about 15 or 16 concerts, Culture Club concerts over the years.
Mhm.
So yeah, you'd have great shots for 2024 where I saw 3 shows, or 2016 where I saw, 3 or 4 shows there, or 2017 where I did six in a
Right.
row, but there'd be lots of gaps in between. So something that is as collaborative as this is with not only David and myself, but the fan community and basically collecting whatever pictures and resources we have from everywhere else makes publishing this book for money impossible.
And I don't,
So
I don't think it's fair to charge for it. I mean,
yeah,
we put a lot of work into it, but nobody put a gun to our head and said you have to do this. If
exactly.
anything, if anything, it was our own passions that made us want to do this. And um, I'm very excited to put this out and let people see what we've done and get the feedback from them and maybe learn more things. I don't want to have a whole bunch of critiques like got this wrong, but I would love to hear, oh yeah, at this show this happened, or you totally missed this date, and it's like, oh my gosh, well update. Um,
There are going to be gaps in there that we didn't know
mhm,
about. There
right.
are going to be dates we've missed. There are going to be additional dates that probably got added onto a tour that didn't get announced in initial press releases or things about it,
Mhm,
where it's like, oh, was that an extra date? Okay. There'll be things where two things may have, a venue may have changed or a location may have changed and one didn't
right.
get cancelled out or whatever, and we've got the wrong date in there or the wrong location. There's going to
Mhm,
be things like that. There's, like I said earlier, the 90s was really hard to research. I
mhm.
am absolutely sure there'd be some dates in there we've missed.
Right.
because it just wasn't reported about, and it wasn't reported about in a way that here's me in the 2020s in Australia trying to find out about it. And
Right.
it's just not, it just doesn't exist. That doesn't mean the show didn't happen. I do this because I love it. I do it because I share
Mhm.
information. I do it, willingly. Cyber Chameleon costs me something every year to run and just to maintain and just to have it up. If I was to give myself an hourly rate for every hour I put into this book, I'd never make that money back.
Right.
Even if I was telling you, give me $100 a week or something, that wouldn't even cover it. Whatever it is. With that said, I did put a little proviso in the introduction that if you want to donate money, there's a PayPal link. And any
Mhm.
money that comes in, I'll share that with David because it's my PayPal account, blah, blah, blah. But we didn't do this for the money.
I'm doing it because I love to share, and share is two-way street. I want to have
Yeah.
the corrections. I want to have the kudos. I want to have, people be as excited about it as we are, and that's payment enough for me. I'm just happy to be able to do something that I've been trying to get done since I was 14 years old.
Yeah, I think that's a very lengthy answer, but I think we've answered why this isn't for sale. Be happy it's for free.
Exactly.
Rather than
I
looking,
think the
well, why
question was
can't I get one?
probably better. I think the person who asked that question was probably hoping to get a physical copy. That's why they want it for sale, to have instead of just a download. But if they are anything like myself, I'll get a physical copy and I will read it, or I'll play the CD or whatever, and then I'll upload it to my computer and put it on a shelf where it collects dust. So you know, I'm happy with digital copies, despite having this huge record collection behind me. um,
Mine looks like
I,
that
I,
too.
yeah, yeah, but I'd rather have a digital than nothing. So,
Yeah. Oh, look, digital's the way to go as far as, the cost involved. It's
mhm,
already, from my point of view, it's already taken 2.5 years to put this together, and
right.
many, many hours of those 2.5 years. Um, and yeah, to add extra money to produce a few physical copies, it just wouldn't work.
Right.
So I think that covers that. But look, if there's anyone out there who actually really wants a physical copy, and needs a printer's version that you want to send to a printer to print, you know, send me an email or something, and I can send
Mhm,
you the files, and you can print out a copy yourself. I,
right.
I think that's probably
And,
the only way
and
around it.
yeah, yeah. And a lot of professional printers will do a great job on it. We're not saying print it off at home, because
Yeah, no, don't
it'll
use your
wear
home
out our home
printer. It
printer.
will ruin your printer and your ink within minutes. Do not do
Yeah.
it at home.
So, okay. Next question, I think is your turn. So,
It's a me. Okay. Um, okay. One about tours in general. Visually, which tour looked the best?
mm, um, wow. There's a lot of individual moments that stand out in my mind as being spectacular, but they're not necessarily inclusive of the entire tour. The thing that popped in my head first was on that one of those first tribe tours at the Greek Theater in Los Angeles. The second night when Jack Black came out and joined them to sing Starman, they had set up the most amazing light show I'd ever seen done at the Greek Theater, and that's one of my favorite venues in the world, is the Greek Theater. And they had um, they'd set up like basically a universe on the screen that bled into the night sky with projectors and all of that. And I was so immersed in that moment. I'm standing there watching all these stars and comets and whatever projected overhead and on the screen in front of me, that when Jack came out and started singing the second verse of Starman, I thought, oh my God, what happened to George's voice? And I was snapped out of that experience and right back onto the stage. And I went, oh, that's somebody else. Oh, it's Jack Black. So, I mean, that was a very beautiful uh, light show that kind of captured me. But the rest of the show, it was just, stage projections of video clips and whatnot, which were fine and beautiful and fun, but they weren't, I wouldn't say that entire tour was the most visually appealing.
For me, the ones I get. I guess George and Culture Club haven't been like with shows, haven't been about big productions generally.
Hmm.
You know, if you go back to the 80s, a lot of their sort of backdrops was either a curtain or the equivalent of curtains at the back, which just had their sort of logo and stuff.
Hmm.
As you went to things like A Kiss Across the Ocean, it was just a sort of giant backdrop which had pictures like different artworks projected onto it.
Right.
George in the 80s and 90s didn't really have any production to it. It was just him and band which would come out and play. Um, you know, you look at things like the Rewind tour, which had the sort of collages and the sort of curtains in the back. But it's only been, I guess, in recent times where there's been any sort of production put into it as far as, you know, detailed projections on the screens and, you know, the lighting and the sort of staging. So for that, I would say, you know, for me, it would be the Zero Arguments tour because a lot of work was put into that production as far as, you know, George came out of a giant, you know, phone booth. Each song had their own video projections done. And, you know, you could see that a lot of effort went into creating that whole sort of set. Um, but, you know, Victims from that in particular was just beautiful in its simplicity. But
Hmm.
yeah, so I would say I'd pick that. My second would be probably the Life tour, as in the UK leg, where there was a little bit of effort put into, I guess, the whole stage and the sort of back screens as well.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's a hard one because I don't think production, you know, as far as when I say production, you know, like a full sort of immersive stage lighting show, I don't think that's what George and Culture Club are about or haven't
Hmm.
been about when they present their music live.
As far back as like 82 and 83, George would say that we're not a production band. We're a rock and roll band. We're going to come out and we're going to do a show, and you're supposed to focus on us and the music, not the stage theatrics and fire and whatnot. Of course, the Waking Up with the House on Fire tour kind of changed a lot of that, but that's the way they started, and and that was good enough. I didn't. I mean, let's face it, George was such a huge star. He could walk out on a bare stage with nothing, even not even a band, and hold the audience's attention then. And I think he's talented enough that with the right songs, he could probably do that again. So, um, yeah, I don't think production values are. I'm not going to say they're not important to the band, but they're not as central to their performance as some other groups are, like Lady Gaga, for instance.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, Lady Gaga, I just saw her last night, and you know, when you talk production, that's production. You know,
Mhm.
I've got an armband which is still blinking at me, which changed color throughout the show as different
Uh-huh.
things were happening and
Oh yeah.
all of that sort of stuff. And the, I guess the screens and the production was so detailed. I mean, it kind of somehow, somewhere in there took a little bit away from the performance as well. But the screens
Right.
and everything was so detailed, you didn't know where the stage began or ended or where everything was just so in sync with each other. So that was a production.
Right.
Um,
And I don't think George would want to do anything less than that. If it couldn't be absolutely flawless, I don't think he'd want to do it. And I don't think that he has like the technical support to do something like that with the budget they're spending on these tours. And that's fine. I would much rather see what he does than see him do something poorly.
so for me, production, I guess when they've put in that little bit extra for production, it's shown. But mostly, yeah, I don't think production's necessarily the top of a George or Culture
Mhm.
Club show.
Do you have a favorite piece of merchandise? Do you?
Um, I mean, I showed my tour book earlier. I guess the one that
Mhm.
was signed by all four of them. I mean, that holds a
Yeah.
special place for me because it was the first time I saw, well, it was the first tour I saw Culture Club live. It was the first time I met all four of them because I'd met George at a DJ tour earlier. So that would be my favorite sort of piece of merchandise. I mean, other than that, I've collected bits and pieces over the years. I love this. waking
Oh,
up with
that's
the
lovely.
house, waking up with the house on fire mug. You know, so that's something that's cute and that sits up on my sort of computer room here. And then I guess it's just a series of t-shirts. I mean, I've got cases full of them now because it's just like they're just so visually stunning. There's no other way to describe them. You got things like Church of the Poison Mind. And this is, and I
Mhm.
mean, this is an absolute credit to, you know, well, for the 80s right up until the sort of mid 2010s, this is a credit to Bob from and the rest of the team from Zebra Merchandising that
Mhm.
they really put out a lot of things that complemented Culture Club's brand and style perfectly. So, you've got beautiful things like this, which, you know, I don't do them justice by wearing them, so I don't. But you know, I pull out these things, I look at them, and I go, "Wow!" You know,
Mhm.
it's just so beautiful and just captures what they were about at any particular time.
And that last one is kind of exciting too because that image of George was
Mm.
used on some of those very first flyers.
The
Um,
first Crocs, the first
right.
Crocs
Uh,
show that's what that's
yeah.
from,
Yeah. So it's kind
which
of exciting to have that and see that.
which you'll see in the book. Plug plug.
Mhm.
um, so that one's one of the Australian ones, which most people
Yeah.
outside of
And that's
Australia
that's
wouldn't have
beautiful.
necessarily seen the backs of those
Hmm.
because we had the
Now,
front.
tell me, can you see on the tag on that one, was that one designed by Zebra Marketing or did he have a different designer in Australia then?
It is a zebra one.
Okay.
I don't know if I can get this really close, but
Oh yeah, I can see that. So I'm sure
yeah.
everyone else can too. So that's
And
good. I didn't know that. He didn't get the UK contract right away. There was somebody else doing the print in the UK. So
classic karma.
yeah, everyone loves that, don't they?
But yeah, I mean they're gorgeous.
Hmm.
And, it takes a lot to get the merchandising right to sort of complement that era.
Hmm.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
I think that's been a big complaint about recent merchandise is that it's all, hodgepodge together and they've got the wrong picture with the wrong album title. It's like, oh, that picture was taken 2 years after that album came out or whatever.
And if I want to
Um,
be really technical, they use the wrong logo on the wrong era, and it's like,
exactly. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that bugs the hardcore fans like us. But that's the kind of, and it could be because they didn't have as much stuff to pull from when they were designing these shirts in the 80s that it was just a lot easier to keep it all straight. But um, and how many people really care about that kind of stuff in this day and age? It's like, oh, that's a house on fire picture on a color by number shirt. But
I do. But most people
anyway,
don't.
I've got a bunch of tour programs next to me, which has been my favorite thing to collect over the years because I don't like the t-shirts. I don't wear them because, I'm a hefty boy and they don't always fit. So I try to not buy them unless I really, really like the designs. But one of my favorite ones here, and I think all of these, the covers are reproduced in the book, so I'm not going to go through each and every one. This is the bootleg tour program, which was a thing in the UK. I don't know if that is such a big deal, but I think most Culture Club fans are familiar with this book. This is the Japanese version, and they always do things better. The cover is embossed. This C back here is popped out on the cover. Basically, it's the same content as the regular UK book, but a bunch of extra Japanese pages added in the beginning. But this is something that I've passed over a million times, probably in my life, trying to collect. I didn't know better. This looks like the same one, but this is the House on Fire tour from the UK. Everywhere else in the world, it says down here multicultural tour, so you can tell them apart instantly. But the ones sold in England didn't have that. But it has the same pages but then all the House on Fire pages too, which is a nice little thing. Um, so if you're in the market for one of those, don't skip over it just because it doesn't say multicultural tour. And then my very first tour book ever from the first show, they still have it here. And this was my seats. Being a child, my seats were not very good. I couldn't afford the best. I was way in the back. But while we were waiting for the show to start, I'm sitting there and I'm looking down at the audience, and the sun was still up. It was still bright. And probably 6 or 7 out of every 10 people had this tour book opened up to this picture with the pinup John Moss and looking down a sea of yellow shorts and chest hair. So that's a fun memory from my first show.
You photographed well.
Yes. But yeah, the merchandise. One more thing I'll quickly talk about here. This is something I just purchased, not just, but last year I got in Canada. I was in a record store there, and I was, asking the guy about Culture Club stuff, and it was in Quebec, and I was trying to get through in French, and he was trying to get around in English, and we do pretty good. But he pulled this out of the back. He has no idea where his boss got it from. It's been sitting on his desk. He sold it to me for $10. I've never seen this anywhere else either. There's no copyright date or anything, but I assume it came from the '84 tour in Canada. It's a shot glass. I'll just keep that in as EDP. Is there anything in the book that you wanted to get and couldn't find, or hoped it could have had that you weren't able to include?
I would have loved more from the early days. Like if there was the odd set list or scrap of something that was, out
Maybe
there.
hinting at a song we didn't know about, or
Yeah,
yeah,
like say if the set list for the first show at Crocs came up, I would love to know exactly what they played there. I
yeah.
mean, we can guess at probably 3 or 4 songs, which might be something like White Boy, Kissing to Be Clever.
Mhm.
Maybe I'll Tumble For You was written by then. I'm not
Maybe,
crazy, Put It Down.
yeah,
But
yeah. Put It Down and Sharp Operator were definitely written at that point, because the first time they played them was just a couple of days later. That I have a recording of was a couple of days later, or a couple of
mm,
weeks later. So I'm sure that they would have had those written. But would Mask or Eyes of Medusa been on there?
or I'm an
Or
Animal, all these ones
yeah,
that have this mystique about them that we've never heard.
yeah.
And never will, probably, but yeah.
No, maybe George will love this book so much he'll send them to us, but I doubt it.
Yeah. Send us your set list, George.
Send us your tapes. We'll digitize
Everything.
them for you.
So that'd be the main sort of things. I mean, if there was infinite time and stuff, finding more of the t-shirts and the memorabilia and the merchandise that came out with each tour. But that's
Mhm.
something they could also. I could be sitting here for another 5 years going through eBay listings and things that people have put up on auction sites and
Right.
finding the odd scrap of a tour, of a ticket stub or a t-shirt or something to put in. So it's not, I mean, the book doesn't have every single t-shirt that's ever been done or every single ticket stub or every single, it just doesn't, it can't happen that way.
Mhm.
Nobody's got that documented, and I'd imagine that somewhere along the way, some of those things have been thrown out and will never be documented.
Right.
So, yeah. Anything from your side that you would have thought should have been in Travelogue that wasn't?
Um, well, more detail, like you said, there a lot of details are lost or forgotten or misremembered for various reasons. But I think it would have been interesting to see more about, or more from, the more exotic locations that they've played. What was the merchandise like in Japan? Or what was, I know he did a tour of South America in the mid 90s,
Mm.
and that was completely independent of Virgin Records, I think. Um, and he may not have had the same kind of connections, or it may not have been affordable to bring the stuff with him, the merch that he would normally have in the United States. So, what was sold, if anything was, and why wouldn't he have something for sale on his first tour of an entire continent? Um, so, things like that were not as readily documented um, in the English language speaking part of the world. You know, he did several shows in Russia around that same time. I don't know anything about those.
Mm.
They were big, big rock festivals where he would come out and do a Jesus Loves You song and, hold the audience's attention. But did anything come of that? Did he sell records because of that? He was banned in Russia in the '80s. So how did it even come about that he could tour then?
Yeah.
And I would think a name of Jesus Loves You in a country like Russia at that time would not have gone over any better than, Boy George.
True.
At that point, I believe Christianity was illegal in communist Russia. So there's always going to be those types of questions to fill in the blanks with, and I don't know how to go about getting those answers because I don't know any fans from Russia, and very, very few from South America. So,
Also something that is missing from Travelogue, just for the simple reason that that information doesn't exist, I guess, are dates by Culture Club members for projects that weren't Culture Club. So
mhm,
like Roy's, dates with This Way Up, because they did. I
yes,
mean, I know they did a few to promote their album and a couple of the
right.
singles along the way, but
I actually talked to Roy about that in around 2000. And I was the very first time I met him, and I gave him one of the 12 inches from This Way Up to autograph. And he has very little recollection of those years. Um, he said, I asked him specifically if he played any Culture Club songs when he played live with This Way Up. And he said, I really don't remember. And the reason why I asked him is because someone went to see, I want to say it was Elton John at the Greek Theater in Los Angeles, and said Culture Club opened for him. And I'm like, why would no, Culture Club wasn't touring that year. They weren't even together. They would not have opened for him.
mm,
And he said, well, it was a different singer. He was a little skinny blonde man. And I thought, oh, that must have been Roy Hay and
and
the
Robinson, yeah.
yeah. And he said, well, I know they played Miss Be Blind. So I asked Roy about that. He goes, well, if I were going to pick a Culture Club song to play, that would be the one I would have done. So I don't know how true that is. It was the guy's memory was very foggy. This was several years after the fact, and Roy's was very foggy about that time period. So yeah, I would love to know what they
Yeah.
did because I know they did a couple of shows with Curiosity Killed the Cat in the UK. Um, I'm not sure who opened for who, but I tend to think that Roy opened for them because they were much bigger at
Mm.
that point.
Yeah,
Because
Curiosity were big in 87, 88. So yeah, that would
yeah.
be more This Way Up opening for them. I
Hmm.
know that what was I going to say? I know that This Way Up did a showcase or two at Ronnie Scott's,
Hmm.
because I remember seeing a picture in a magazine somewhere in the late 80s where it's like, oh, and This Way Up were at Ronnie Scott's. So I know that happened. I mean, also there would have been things like, did John do any live dates with Heartbeat UK?
Hmm.
Or when Mikey was promoting his single I'm a Believer in the 80s, did he do
Right.
any dates to showcase that and any of the other new songs he was working on and throw some Culture Club songs in there?
Right.
So there's stuff like that. And of course, throughout the years, John's been in a few bands. Mikey's also
Hmm.
guested in a few bands.
True. Yeah.
And Roy's
Something
played the odd
interesting
date
too,
here and there.
something just popped into my head too, is that a lot of the session musicians got traded around. If you go through the credits on the This Way Up album, um, all the backing singers were George's backing singers on Sold,
Yeah.
and the bass player for some of the songs was Mikey Craig, as I'm sure most of us know, but
Mm.
also one of George's bass sessions, and it was all very uh, linked, and I wonder if on these shows and these concerts that they would have used the same backing musicians as appeared in the credits, because that would even make it more culture clubby,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word, to see all those familiar faces with them. But
Yeah. So I
I don't
mean,
know.
yeah, so I mean that's something that's missing from Travelogue,
Mhm.
the Culture Club members outside of what they were doing in Culture Club.
Right, right, and and I don't think we'll ever get those answers because Roy doesn't remember, and Robinson passed away,
Yeah.
so I don't even know who we would go to get those answers. Uh, so that's too. I don't think Helen ever played live either. When she
Yeah.
did her album, that would be interesting to find out too. So,
Yeah, I mean that's also something. She may have done a showcase or two, to promote
mhm,
Blue Notes when that came out, or
mhm,
later on when she had a couple of those other singles, towards the end of the 80s. I guess as we're sort of leading out of this conversation, the question is now that Travelogue is done and it's coming out in the upcoming weeks. What's next for us?
Well, you kind of mentioned a little bit about lyrically speaking earlier on, and some of the plans you have for that. So why don't you talk about that a little bit? Let people know who may not have been around for the first version, um, and maybe need to be reintroduced to it. Even though I know it's still there, it's just not been updated in a while.
It
So,
hasn't been updated forever. There's probably about 20 years of songs that need to be added into this now.
and
It,
it's a very prolific 20 years for George. So,
yeah. I mean, just the last sort of 5, 10 years alone, there's probably a couple of hundred songs there.
mhm,
So yeah, one of my aims in 2026 and beyond is to get lyrically speaking up to date. I think it's important to have a resource out there that sort of covers George's words and writings.
mhm.
Um, yeah, so that will take a little bit of work, sort of, I guess, listening and transcribing lyrics and finding bits and pieces online and bringing that all up to a current version, which I'm happy about. I'm not happy that
You
I've
look
left
really happy.
it. I'm not happy with leaving it that long, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I think
something I'm.
it's a worthwhile project. I think you'll feel happy once you're doing it and underway
Yeah.
because you know it's important.
And likewise, I really would love to redesign the Cyber Chameleon website. I know that hasn't
Mhm.
had a lot of love in the past few years, but it's kind of like, who even looks at websites these days? It's more about
Yeah.
social media and profiles and stuff. So, it might be something where I just do a simple update that makes it look more modern, I guess, or more up to date,
Mhm.
and just sort of steer people maybe to Facebook or something. But I'm
Or
looking into
or
that.
make it so beautiful people can't resist and they'll come back to websites.
I'm toying with what I'm going to do with that, but I do want to do
Yeah,
something to the cyberchameleon.com site. And also we've got a couple of book ideas
we
as well,
do.
don't we?
And the one that I'm excited about, and we just started talking about, so I'm not sure when it's going to come out. So, but it actually kind of ties exactly in with what you were talking about because my inspiration for this book comes from two non-George related sources. It's a book that tentatively we're going to call discography, but I know we're going to have a better name by the time we get done with it.
I
And
like
this is something
anthology myself.
you like what?
Manthology.
Oh, okay.
So to tie in would take it like a man, an anthology.
Right.
Manthology.
But the idea came to me, and I'm going to shamelessly say it's not my idea. I stole it from two other bands. Duran Duran have a beautiful book called The Book of Words, and it's their career from their first record up until their Arena album in 1985. And I'm not about to do something like this where we publish all the lyrics because that could get us in a lot of trouble. But in the back of it was the first time I ever saw a discography in my life. And they go with an album and then all the singles underneath it. And this is just UK details. What we want to do is something more along the lines of what the Pet Shop Boys have just announced. It's an update of their book that's similar to this, but it's a whole like 1,000-page volume of everything related to every release. Front cover, back cover labels, print ads, clips from videos. It's a like you said at the very beginning of this, it's a resource that Culture Club fans just don't have. The best source we have is the Discogs website, which, if you don't know about that, that's a site where you can buy and sell used records and also update records that you have, or upload them to their database. And it's a great resource, but it's still lacking, I think, at least the way I envision the way discography should be. So, based on what the Pet Shop Boys are doing and what Duran Duran have done, I want to take a book that is going to be a resource for fans, just like our previous books, and be the definitive source of what George has put out on vinyl and CD and cassette around the world. So I'm extremely excited about that, but it's not even in the beginning stages. We've just talked about it. I think I've said more about it right now than we have actually talked about it with each other. So um, it
That's
might
true.
not be it might not be for another year or two.
Yeah, hopefully nobody was seeing the cogs turning in my head going, another 1,000-page book. No.
No, 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 no. We'll keep it to. I'd like to keep it to a 2-page spread per release at most. But we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see.
I mean, there's also another plan. I mean, in the next year or two, there are a couple of albums celebrating their respective anniversaries.
Mhm.
And I know we've talked about doing a scrapbook for one of those. We won't say which one, but
Okay.
if I tell you that it's coming out in 2027, that'll give you an idea, maybe. So so that's a possibility, and we're looking at that. So
Mhm.
that is possibly more likely as coming out first before discography
Probably.
or
Yeah.
manthology or whatever we end up calling that.
Yeah.
Just as an aside,
Insanity.
one of my friends called me up on the title of this book and said, "Did you know that Travelogue's a Human League album?"
Oh,
I
that's
didn't.
right.
I
That is
didn't.
right.
I didn't. I That completely went over my head. I think when we were talking titles for this book, we had
Hmm.
Setlist as the first one, just as a very, rough ideas of what
Uh-huh.
the book was called. But then I think when I was toying with titles, I think Tour Log came up like it was like a tour catalog. And
Hmm.
I'm like, Tour Log just sounds like something that you'd find in IKEA for a suitcase.
Right. Yeah, it
I've
doesn't
got the
roll off the
black
tongue
Tour
very
Log from
nicely.
IKEA. Um, and so then that's when I went Travelogue and was like, oh, that's got a much better ring to it. So I had no concept of the Human League connection there.
Mm.
But
Well, I hope they don't get mad at us.
yeah, we didn't steal it from you.
No, it was all
I mean,
accident.
we may hate that you got the lead single from Electric Dreams and not Love Is Love, but we didn't steal it from you.
Um, what else? I think that's all we have planned, isn't it? God,
Yeah.
I hope so.
I
That's a
mean,
lot.
I'm looking at our checklist for today, and I think we've covered everything. So that yeah, that's the chat. And yeah, if you've listened this far, thank you, because it's
Hmm.
quite a long chat. I
It
think I was
is
expecting half an hour at most, and this has probably ended up being about an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on
close
what
to,
the
yeah.
edit ends up being. Um,
Right.
but yeah, so if you've got to this point and you're interested about seeing Travelogue, head on to Cyber Chameleon on Facebook. So that's facebook.com/cyberchameleon. And book one should be waiting for you there if you're seeing this around December 10. If you're seeing it after it, it's definitely there. And the other volumes will be soon to follow.
Mhm. We're hoping
That just
a
makes this
weekly
project
schedule
all
for
the
the
more
next
important
three
because
books. So,
if
Yeah.
those can disappear
There's,
so
there's a little bit of
completely
editing and tweaking and
from
stuff at the moment
the
going
public
through with all of
mind
them, but
that
book one is
even someone like
definitely
us
coming out
who
on the 10th.
practically
So
do
you'll
this
be
as a
seeing
living
that
can't
in
find
just
those
a few
answers.
days' time.
More of
mhm.
this culture club stuff is going to start disappearing too.
So
We
we're
are here to
excited. I
document it
hope all of
and
our
like
viewers
it
are as
live.
excited. I don't think they could be as excited as we are, but that's what I'm hoping for.
I'm relieved.
Mm.
I'm relieved it's done. This has been,
Yeah.
for me, this has been the last 2.5 years quite intensively.
Hmm.
So,
Beyond a labor of love.
yeah,
It's
you can't get paid for this sort of stuff.
no. And like you said, it's long overdue. I mean, you look at what's out there from Madonna and the Pet Shop Boys and Duran Duran, and you can find any little tiny bit of information you could ever want on them. And Culture Club, it's if it weren't for you and you specifically, it would be kind of a wasteland. You have done so much for the Culture Club community and for George in general that I don't even think George understands what you've been able to accomplish without any financial backing, without any official approvals. And I hope that one day soon that will turn around.
Um,
You were talking about the beautiful designs that were coming out of Zebra marketing, and I feel like yours trumps those.
Trump
Uh,
zebra, no way.
um, I feel like you have been overlooked for far too long. And if you get any kind of official recognition out of this, I know that nothing could make me prouder about this publication than that.
I do. I mean, it comes back to I do it because I love it, and thank you for being a part of this book.
I love being a part of this book.
You know, and
Every assignment
thank
you've given
everyone
me.
for their contributions. And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I hope that, you know, George and the rest of Culture Club see this and go, wow, you know, and hopefully, you know, that might inspire them for whatever their next tour might be or their next album might be, as to, oh, maybe we can approach this slightly differently and do this. Or,
Mhm.
you know, who knows what this little book we've made, it's not so little, but this little book we've made, you know, will bring on next.
Mhm. If nothing else, I hope it lets everyone who sees it, regardless of how they're connected to the group, um, see that it's important, that what they have done for the last 40 years has had an impact on people's lives, um, and they'll continue forward with that kind of energy, because they've done it so well for so long. It's no point in quitting now.
No. And you know, as an audience, if you like what you see with the book, go see the next show.
Right.
Plug for them.
Buy the next album. Download the next single.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
yeah, one keeps the other going. So yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
support the artists.
All right. So in
So,
signing off, I'll say thank you, David, for working on Travelogue with me. And yeah, we can't wait to see everyone's reaction to it coming out.
mhm. Yeah, you said it all. That's goodbye from Arizona.
And goodbye from Melbourne. All right.
Take care.
Take
Bye-bye.
care and yeah, enjoy Travelogue. Okay,
Okay, we're
that's it.
out.
Yes.
That wasn't so bad.
No, we ended up chatting
It
for
almost
much
sounded
longer than I
professional
thought.
at a couple points.